Welcome to Tech Topics brought to you by Cybervenger. We help keep small businesses stay protected and compliant with cutting-edge cybersecurity and IT solutions.
Hello everyone and welcome. My name is Andy. I'm the managing consultant for Cybervenger. Today we're doing another deep dive in the 110 controls of the NIST 800-171. And that whole mouthful just means that there's a standard out there that people who do business with the Department of Defense and other federal agencies need to follow to protect something called controlled unclassified information. If you know what that is, then definitely keep watching. If you don't, we have a video on what the NIST 800-171 is. Probably go check that out. Really important if you want to do business with the federal government. Anyway, this particular control is 3.4.2. We're now in the configuration management portion of the controls, like grouped by families. This is that particular family. This control, if we look down here at our list here, our NIST configuration list, we have 3.4.2, and it says establish and enforce security configuration settings for information technology products employed in the organizational systems. And then if you look just a little over to the next one here, there's a whole lot of verbiage there. I'm not going to take time to specifically read, but they're basically talking about every kind of device that you have on your network should have some kind of pre-written security standard. 3.4.1, which we just spoke about, says that you should have a baseline configuration written down for everything. This is more talking about specifically security settings in that baseline and about having enforcement. So what would enforcement be? Well, a classic example of this would be group policy. Let's say you wanted to make sure that USB thumb drives, those flash drives, aren't accessible on workstations. You could create a group policy object in Active Directory that explicitly says, hey, don't allow this in the operating system. It'll still allow things like keyboards to work. You don't have to disable the USB port, but group policy will do that. Now, you could do this by setting the registry in a workstation, or even by creating a image. So if you're doing imaging with machines, you can create an image where that registry setting is set and USB ports don't work. But this control would be better served by using group policy because you have a way of enforcing. Because once the setting is created, someone can flip it back. But if you have group policy, it's continually being refreshed, confirmed, and reapplied. So if someone does manage to turn USB ports on, it'll turn itself back off pretty quickly. Other settings like that, you kind of mind. It's all about control. So if you have SCCM, Windows Configuration Manager, or any of the newer tools, or anything like that, or an RMM system like Enables Insight, that's our preferred tool. We use that for our customers. You can have scripts that run. You can have checks that check on the system to be sure that certain key security parameters are actually being enforced and that they're actually being maintained and deployed and all that sort of thing. You don't just want to have settings out there and hope that they're going to work. You want to be able to manage it. Managing is a big deal with NIST. There's a lot of controls that talk about logging and evaluating and confirming and managing. So you want to make sure that whatever technology you use gives you a reasonable amount of control and visibility in what's going on and way to make things happen, policies and such. So what are some of the things that you might want to lock down? They don't really give you a ton of examples here. There's some very vague language. NIST is trying to be a generic framework and a standard. It's not telling you exactly what to do so much at the technical level. So if I had a Windows environment, you may want to, for one, lock down USB drives. We already talked about. That's a good one. I think there's other NIST controls that kind of sort of explicitly spell that one out. But you could do it through group policy. You can use an RMM tool to run a set of scripts, like a hardening script every so often. And a hardening script is a nice way to do things. You get a PowerShell script or something like that, or whatever you want to use. Ironically, a PowerShell script might be a tough one because disabling PowerShell is a good thing you can do for security. Security is all about reducing your attack surface. Like, there's nothing inherently wrong with PowerShell, but it's another thing that could go wrong. It's another bulb in that Christmas tree light set, and all you need is one bulb to go back out and the whole set's dead, right? Follow that old analogy, or link in the chain, however you want to put it. So if you disable that, for example, you can have maybe Visual Basic scripting. You gotta have to pick one type of scripting system to use to manage it, right? Other settings you could do would be to have maybe the background locked out so you can't put a custom background in there, or custom screensaver. Now, why would you want that? Why is that a security thing? You can do different screensavers, and sometimes that screensaver has code. You get those moving pictures in there. There have been some exploits where people have been able to do funky things where you change the screensaver and you point it to command.com, and then when the screensaver kicks in, a command prompt comes up. It's a registry hack. So you want to lock down that so the end users can't change their screensavers. All kinds of things like that, just to give you some ideas of what to come up with. Again, this is not an exhaustive list, just kind of jogging your brain a little bit, what else to think about. Another one I really like doing in our network is I disable hidden administrative shares on all my servers, especially domain controllers. You never need that on a domain controller unless you're trying to manage it through, some specific tool. Like if you've got a backup system that pushes an agent out, that agent push will probably fail if you disable hidden administrative shares. But on the bright side, if you have hidden administrative shares disabled, no one with admin rights can connect to your server directly to $$ and get to all the Windows operating system files. It's a much better way of locking down the server. I always do that. That's one of my favorites. I also get rid of remote desktop. Not a fan of remote desktop. There's so many security exploits involving remote desktop. It's just kind of not worth it. You're probably going to have some kind of RMM tool on your platform anyway if you're going to be implementing NIST. So like in our case, Nsight is one of our favorite tools, or if you had LabTech or Continuum or any of them, you have an alternate way to remote to the desktop of that machine and do configuration management. And those tools usually have two factors, so it's much safer than straight RDP. So I disable RDP. I almost always rename the administrator account from administrator to something unique to the organization that not everybody's going to know. That makes it harder to break in if you don't have the accounts. There's all kinds of settings like that. Again, the standard you would certainly want to have is you'd want to have an antivirus, more than an antivirus. You want endpoint protection, possibly even managed threat detection using a service to watch it 24 hours a day. I think that actually comes up in a requirement. But those kinds of things should be part of your security policy and enforced. If you have a managed antivirus or endpoint system, you should have a dashboard that talks about all the endpoints, and you should check that dashboard to make sure they're checking in, that they're actually all there. So you should use that as an inventory and make sure that everything's getting updated and responding, and that there aren't any like quarantine items that couldn't be quarantined or something like that. And that's a way to enforce that. You could create a group policy that deploys certain minimum security software like your EDR client or your RMM tool or anything else. As soon as you join Active Directory, in order to join Active Directory, you get all this stuff popping in. That's a great thing to do. Another one I really like for protecting ransomware is we have shadow copies enabled. Typical ransomware attack, first thing they do is want to get rid of shadow copies because then you can roll back. If you can roll back, you don't pay the ransom. So they tend to shut that off before the real damage starts. If you have an alert that alerts you the minute shadow copies service is killed or disabled on a volume list, particularly on the servers and the workstation, that might get a little unwieldy if you got a lot of workstations. But on the servers, certainly, you can get alerted right away, and that's a way to enforce that. And it's a good way to be able to roll back, too. I don't like counting on shadow copies, but to me, it's like a great tripwire to catch ransomware, folks. And it's a pretty easy thing to set up in most RMM tools. You can run a Visual Basic script to check and see if that's on or not. You could do things about profiles. You can do a look and feel for corporate, benefit branding and such like that. That's not really security related, but it's a nice thing to throw in there. But again, you don't want that to be one-off. You want it to be managed across your enterprise, tracked, enforced, right? Anything you do, you want to make sure it keeps happening no matter what. Another interesting technology to explore, and I haven't really used it that much. Most of my customers are small enough that they get a little overkill, but if larger organizations can look into this. Microsoft has something called network access control. Network access control, basically what it does is your workstations are not allowed to talk to the network. A lot of times they'll be stuck on a completely separate VLAN, like a guest VLAN, guest wireless, so they can get to the internet, they can download antivirus patches, all that kind of stuff, but they can't touch anything internal or do their job until they get a certificate of health from the network access control server. That enforces to make sure that EDR is up to date and working, that certain parameters, maybe certain software's installed, certain software's not installed, maybe certain patch levels are reached on both applications and the operating system. Maybe you could test for default credentials or default. You can do all this stuff, and if it doesn't pass that, then it doesn't pass and doesn't get on the network. So these are just kind of an example of all the kind of things that you can do. It's not an exhaustive list. I want to jog your memory a little here. This video went a little long, but I thought it was kind of interesting to talk about the things you can do in securing. So if you guys got any interesting ones that you do at your network and your place of business, put in the comments. I'd love to hear what kind of security suggestions you have, what things you monitor for what kind of across the board baseline sort of security parameters that you use or you've heard of. We'd love to collaborate with you on that. Thanks again for watching. Hope to see you again soon. Made with Cyberventer, and have an awesome day.
Thanks for watching. We hope this video has provided valuable information to you. Be sure to share this video with other small business owners to spread the word about the importance of cybersecurity. As always, don't forget to like and subscribe for more videos like this. If you want more information about cybersecurity, visit us at www.cybervenger.com.